Susie, I absolutely love you in The Artful Dodger. I love that Lady Jane suffers no fools. And there are a lot of fools, I think, around her, but she's also very supportive of her daughters and whatever their dreams are. Is that how they tended to describe her to you when you first found this role?
Yeah, that is actually. And I kind of love the feminist vibe to it. I love the fact that a woman kind of runs the colony. But my sort of husband, who's not overly bright, but not to be mean to him, um, is that, and the thing is, back in the 1840s, the women weren't allowed to do anything apart from needlepoint, play the harp, and get married. So really, one thing that really stood out to me is how thankful I am to all those women that went before me, that we are free and able to do so much more now. That was a real thing that kind of hit me because we take it for granted. I mean, sometimes our pay is not the same, just saying, but it's certainly getting better in in all of that sort of stuff. And I just love Lady Jane, the fact that she doesn't have to, she's egoless in the way that she just wants the best for the colony. She wants the best for her family. She'll protect her husband. And she loves both her daughters equally for the different things that they want to achieve, you know?
And it's so great to see her so supportive of those girls. And my favorite scene, at least at the beginning of the series, is when, she's like, and who are these warrants for? And oh goodness, a chicken. She should be, let's flog her right here and now. She stole a chicken. Oh no. She
Yeah.
definitely needs to be murdered right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like she has a real sort of future sensibility about her, and that she's very fair, and that she's seen a lot go on, in her life. And the fact that her husband, he was going to be the governor, I think, somewhere in Africa, and he stuffed that up. And so we arrive in Australia. And, in Australia at that time as well, I mean, it wasn't the most kind of friendly as far as the animals and the heat and the flies. And, you have all these people in big crinolets, you've got the corsets, and it's stinking hot here, and also missing I suppose the culture of London and whatnot. But what a great adventure it was, for the Aussies, and also the fact that Charles Dickens wrote in the time of when the colonies were getting set up in Australia. So he always had a real interest in Australia. Um, so yeah, we just think it's really clever, and we all just loved being part of it. And it's funny, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's really romantic. It's a beautiful series.
I mean, I did think, speaking along those topics, I did think that maybe Belle's suffering was more like asthma rather than, or, like some sort of physicality that was wrong, or maybe she was even having panic attacks because, those corsets are so tight and, she was so determined at the same time. So, it was less, I thought, like an illness and more like, maybe the stifling of her body.
Actually, that's a really good point. I haven't thought of that, but a lot of that stuff you could imagine were misdiagnosed as well. And for instance, both my grandmother and my great grandmother were both put in psych wards. One was in there for 30 years and another was in there for 6 years. And strangely enough, my grandmother, where we filmed The Dodger, is actually, in parts of it, is where my grandma was. I know, it's kind of wild, isn't it? And that was probably postnatal depression they had, but it was sort of like they're mad. My great grandmother had, she was in Ballarat, which is a country area in Victoria, and she was, straitjacketed and electric shock therapy and all of that sort of stuff. So I think we've come a long way. So you're right, it could have been anxiety, could have been asthma, but because a lot of the time they didn't, we've learned so much over the last, you know, century or more. And it keeps getting, the one great thing of mankind is that, I suppose, this fact that we can actually move ahead. I mean, we're sort of destroying the world, but we also move ahead with a lot of things as well. So like medically, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's actually a really good analogy. And she was such a vibrant character. The fact of wanting to be a doctor and the simple fact that she wasn't allowed, like it's so wild to think of that, isn't it? Like my sister's a doctor. She was able to freely study and become one. It's really cool.
She is very supportive of her daughters, and that's quite ahead of her time, whether it's a medical career, whether it's not getting married, and whether her daughter, is fully like 2 seconds and nope, that's not the right person. Nope. He's been traveling for 4 months, stepped out of the carriage. Nope, not me. But at the same time, she says, spend some time to get to know him, at least put some effort into it. So we see that you're trying a little bit, at least. I
Yeah.
love that connection. Talk about working with Maya, and of course with Lucy Rose to flesh out that familial bond you have with your beautiful daughters.
Yeah, they're gorgeous girls. I think what we really did is spent time, a lot of time in between takes. Um, and we all just got on really well, is the truth. And we knew the archetypes we were playing. And so yeah, we'd always have lunch together, we would always talk, we'd find out about each other, while working. And also love the fact that Lucy Rose, her character, Fanny, wanted to marry and do all that, which is completely and utterly acceptable as it is today. But also the fact that Belle wanted something else. And I also think that Lady Jane knew that there is a certain class structure. It is less so maybe in Australia now. I always think it's kind of alive and well in England. It's more clear the divides, of where, just simply the way you talk will basically put you into a social class. And I think that also Lady Jane understands that with Belle, you do have to marry someone, or it's better to probably marry someone who is equal in your status and class. It was completely acceptable then, you
But
know?
also, Belle Belle makes it a little difficult for Fanny because Fanny can't get married until Belle does, just for societal reasons. It wouldn't look good, and she wants to follow her heart, and she's obviously a devoted daughter, though we see her playing the harp. And her mom says, "Sit, sit, sit."
Yep, sit up, do that.
So there, she does have a she does clearly, have an interest in her daughter's, success personally, though, as well as their future, whether it's marriage or whether it's following your heart to be a doctor.
Yeah, yeah. And it'd be interesting to see, like, if there was a second series, how and what happens and how it all unfolds in the second series. But yeah, very interesting and really made me I suppose super grateful, as I said at the beginning of the interview, super grateful for the women that have come before, for the women who have fought for our rights. And we're lucky, I mean, maybe they didn't know any different then, but I think that I probably would have been more on the Bell side than the Fanny.
Yes.
I just know that would be, and I don't know whether I could have probably studied medicine. I don't know, but I would have wanted to choose a different life from needlepoint, and
Well, surely you have an artistic passion, so they would let you maybe follow
well,
that.
who knows? I mean, maybe being an actor back then was near like prostitution almost.
Yes,
May
because in Shakespeare's time, all the parts were played by men. Women or not.
Mm.
So who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
We've come a long way.
I have to ask about, we talked a little bit about Belle's experience wearing those beautiful costumes, but what was your experience like having to dress in the Victorian era and put on the costume? Is that how you stepped into your character as well?
I did, and I actually researched a fair bit just about how like a woman is to walk. Obviously I thought, well, I can't, yeah, I just have to know how to walk and to stand. And I also studied a little bit of the history of the costumes because costume, different clothes really mark history and
Mm,
time of history. And I found that very interesting to know that instead of all the massive petticoats, that the well-to-do then moved to a thing called the crinoline, which is usually made with whalebone, and it kind of
yes.
stuck up. So they didn't feel as hot. They could kind of move a little bit easier. Um, and so, but also a lot of women died apparently. Catching on fire, I read, and they couldn't get the gear off quick enough. Um, so as time went on, it became less structured, which is kind of amazing to kind of that the big crinoline went, the corset went eventually, and history just basically, and societal, economic things all influenced how all that costume changed. So I find that really fascinating. And one thing we all felt is, my God, because it was really quite hot towards the end when we were filming, being indoors and being outdoors in those costumes, you really go, wow, how did they do that?
Yes.
How and they had to, the only time they could sort of like strip down is when they're in their bedroom alone at night. They can't be seen without any of that stuff. And I thought, wow, that would have been a really, really tricky thing. But hopefully, practicality steps in a lot of the time. And
Yes.
um, they moved to the 20s, which were the flappers, and then before you know it's actually kind of quite quick, 40 years.
You're able to show your ankles, let alone
Isn't that wild? It's so wild, and you see old photos as well on the beach where people are covered neck to knee. But I kind of like that. Being fair skinned, I kind of like wear, board shorts and a rash vest and all of that. So I'm a little bit like that at the beach. But yeah, it is amazing, isn't it? That just the flash of the ankle could have been scandalous. Or even in the 60s when the Jean Shrimpton, the famous model, wore a dress above the knee, quite above the knee. Like it was scandalous. And you just think of now with the activewear that goes about town, think, oh my Lord. So as I look at these girls and I think, please put some clothes on. But that's just my little that I mean, I'm certainly not a prude, but I do look and think, wow, there's nothing to the left of the imagination in that one. Not that I think is, I certainly am not prudish with that. But yeah, I don't get around in that. But, isn't it great that women are freely able to wear whatever they want?
absolutely.
It's pretty good.
Well, that's also, what I found amazing too about watching that scene where my Belle strips off of her dress, first of all, in front of a man. Second of all, when she is having trouble breathing, you think, she could, hyperventilate at that point
Yeah,
because you were talking
yeah.
about, how many layers you had to strip off just to.
Oh yeah. In between takes, it was in the big old mansion that we were filming in, they didn't have air
I
conditioning.
was
So we
just
had the
just saying
portable.
that there was.
And sometimes there's this sort of like big snake with that the air came out of, and people sort of put it up our dresses and put it on our face. Like it was really quite hectic, that heat, filming in the heat. But it's also so great to dress up, and it helps you with the character so much, and that's what I really love about acting. I wore a wig, had a and they do, all the makeup girls would say, we've done great things with your hair. We're going to put all this sort of, because they had basket weaves in the hair and they did all this
Yes.
sort of interesting stuff. So that and the way that you dressed automatically got you into character and automatically, yeah, it's interesting with the hair and the makeup and the costume together. It's almost like that really helps you to, and then you got the script and the other actors, and then the creation of the characters are there.
There's so many incredible scenes to this, and I have to think having a surgery done in your foyer is sort of risque for, for that time, but it didn't seem that way watching along. But I do have to ask, what were some of your favorite scenes to film for The Artful Dodger?
I loved all the dinner party scenes. Just because I find them interesting to shoot because they do take quite a while. I love the dinner party scenes. I also loved when all the suitors would turn up for for Fanny and when they sort of hopped out. I always just found them really, really funny. Um, and obviously right at the end when Belle's having her operation, that was pretty amazing to film. Obviously I'm not there for a lot of the other film, for the scenes that I'm not in, but yeah, there were just I just found it really quite funny, especially when those suitors would come out of the carriage. Um, yeah, just some really special things. Yeah, they were my favorite, I think.
With all of the incredible talents you had on set, what was it like for you shaking off a long day of being on set? Was it easy? Certainly, finally taking off the dress and breathing again. But what was it like for you all to decompress? Did you have, group meals together? Did you just take a long hot shower and relax on your own to sort of strip the day away?
I think that's what I often do. Because once they have to stick your hair down and with a lot of sticky stuff, to put the wig on. So to me, I kind of love to have a shower. I exercise, I have cups of tea. And sometimes I could walk home from where we filmed was just up the road from where I live. So that was also nice to just put my like my Birkenstocks on, and I wear the most like comfortable clothes. So to put all of that on and then walk down the hill and through the park was also a nice way to decompress. But to be honest, there was lots of fun apart from probably that the scene when Belle is in the hospital being operated on by the Dodger. I think, apart from that, because that was a very emotional and you had to get in the right frame for that. But a lot of the other stuff was absolutely like we all laughed and had so much fun. So it was actually really light and entertaining. And I'd worked with Damien Garvey before and Damon Herriman. And, also I hadn't worked with Jeffrey Walker as the director, and I've really loved doing that and working with him at the moment, actually, on another project. So, I think he's incredible. And Corey Chen, who I worked with on a show called Wentworth. And and then and Gracie Otto, who's another woman who shot some stuff. So that was also good to have. Now I've noticed over the time that there are more female directors, like instantly on um on set. So that's a really good thing. And obviously, yeah, working with Corey was great to see her again. After doing Wentworth for quite a few years. So it was good.
What did you
Yeah.
personally take away from your time working on The Artful Dodger? Is there new friendships that are formed? Is it excitement for future work? Is it a pride for the work that you did on the series?
Definitely a pride. Definitely the people, like everyone got on really well, but very rarely you get a group of actors who don't get on well. But this was like everyone got on really well. Um, so there was that, friendships, and also I suppose the dialogue was so wonderful to say. So I think James McNamara had done, a great job on that. Um, and there was also another writer who slipped my mind, and he's like my favorite Australian writer. But I blame that for getting up at Andrew Knight. I had a momentary lapse in my brain, Andrew Knight. So to have and to meet Andrew Knight was a pretty cool thing because he's a top writer in Australia. So to sort of meet him on set was a real highlight. But also for me, it was a character type that I hadn't really got to play before. I think I'd played that character type in drama school, but never, and maybe on stage, but not on film and television to play the lady of the house. A lot of the time I will play a criminal or a, bogan could be a hard word, but maybe on the wrong side of the tracks character. And Lady Jane was, I just loved playing the lady. And a girlfriend and I used to, like, we walk every Monday together around that area. And I walked past the Swifts mansion where we shot that in Darling Point. And I said, I really, really want to work in that house one day because they film a lot of projects. And then I did. So that was a really cool thing too, to finally work in that house and be a lady. And I just kind of think, well, I'd like to, not that I was typecast as a certain character, but in a way you can't help but be typecast. So for me to play different character types, hopefully that opens me up for a whole lot of different character types to play as well.
Well, I hope so. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say the wonderful work you did on Wentworth was quite powerful. And people continue, of course, to talk about that series. What did it mean to you to be a part of such a well-received show and well-written show, well-acted show? And it must have been exceptional for you, A, to be a part of it, and B, to hear the wonderful recognition it continues to get.
Look, it was amazing. I was a huge fan of Prisoner as a kid. So I loved Prisoner growing up. So to be part of that, and I'd auditioned for the role of B when it first started, probably along with a whole lot of other, actors our age going for B. But I think Danielle was the perfect B, and she was meant to get that role, I reckon. So I'd auditioned for it and hadn't got it. And then nothing was sort of really coming to me in Wentworth. I was dying to be in it. And then Murray Winter came up, and wow, that was it was a challenge to play, also because she's not inherently, likable at the beginning, but what a journey from coming in as sort of matriarch, kind of top dog type person to have the escape, to then want to take my own life, to then, end up stabbed by Lou Kelly in the garbage room. And I remember being really upset with the producers when they said, we're thinking of killing your character. And they said, oh, yeah, you get stabbed in the garbage room. And I remember I felt so upset for Mari. And I said, what? So after everything she's been through, she's just going to be like discarded like a piece of rubbish. Like, it really upset me. I remember having a few tears about it and thinking, this poor woman, because it felt like she was real to me. And that's how we all felt about our characters in Wentworth. And what an amazing group of women, and who made, talk about making friendships on that show. And I just love the women on that show. I loved everything about it. We do, Wentworth cons. I was meant to come to New York, and I I couldn't. My visa thing didn't come through, and I had been in Austria doing a movie, and it was just too hard to sort it all out. But I'm hoping to come to America next year, and do that. We've done also stuff in England and the Wentworth Con in Melbourne and Sydney. So for us to see the fans that love the show, and the women that get to see all walks of life being represented on television, which I think is a really important thing, to be young and grow up and to watch something that you can relate to. Um, you know, I just think is a really important thing, really, for everything. So it's like the biggest highlight of my career to be on Wentworth, without a shadow of a doubt.
So, what's next for you? Have you been busy working on other projects recently?
Yeah, I did a movie called Dirty Boy in which is about a cult, and that was filmed in Austria. Um, and which was really interesting. And then I'm filming something called Apple Cider Vinegar, which was about an Australian girl who faked brain cancer. And it was just sort of when Instagram was in 2010, when Instagram was sort of really kicking off, and she created an app and a cookbook and said she basically cured her cancer through good eating. And she didn't have illness at all. And she was caught out. So it's about that. And I play the mother of another girl who actually does have cancer and all the ramifications that that caused. So it's all about kind of wellness. And so, yeah, that's what I'm working on at the moment. So I'll go back to Melbourne in like January and February and finish that. But that's really great. And that's with an American, really fantastic American actress called Caitlin Dever, who oh wow, her Australian accent's amazing. What she's just incredible, that girl. So I was really chuffed to meet her. And yeah, so she's the lead. Loved her and like she's just really clever.
Exceptional, very, very well received these years. She's been killing it in the acting lately.
Oh my God. And she's 26 or something,
I know
she's
it's very hard to believe.
yeah, like I'm just so impressed with her, and she's just the nicest girl, like so down to earth and gorgeous. And yeah, so that was really cool meeting her. So yeah, she's our Belle Gibson. And I'm sure I haven't said anything because they have had a press release about that.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure that's fine that I mentioned that.
What would you like to say then to everyone who are fans and supporters of the incredible work you do on our screens, whether it's film or television?
I suppose I'm always grateful that people will watch. I'm always grateful that we have an audience that allows us to keep making stuff. I think especially I felt that with Wentworth, we got because they came down. I remember the head honchos came down and said, "Look, we're going to discontinue it." This is before the last 20 episodes. And we were all very disappointed about that, obviously, but thought, well, there's not much we can do. And then the fans kind of really kicked up a stink, and we got 20 more episodes. So it's sort of like, you guys out there kept us in jobs, kept us in it, and kept the show going. So I suppose I'm just always grateful that people will watch the content, and I just hope to be as genuine and truthful in the work, you know, basically.